Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with yet another brand new Hammond collection release. We've got ourselves the baby Triceratops as well. Yes, this one has been showing up at different Ross stores in the United States with the Atrociraptor. Again, both are about $6, which again is pretty crazy in the grand scheme of things, considering they're not even technically supposed to be released yet, and the official retail is $15 for each, so it's definitely a good deal showing up at Ross right now. But you can see again the image of the baby right here, the species name, nice window area to look at the Triceratops within, and then when we turn it, of course, to the side there, we've got another shot of the Triceratops, some more images of it here on the back, and then of course the Hammond collection logo on the opposing side. So let's pop the box open and check it out. So here is our baby Triceratops now out of the packaging, and I must say I actually quite like it. I think overall, sculpt wise, it looks really nicely done, and also has some pretty decent paintwork to it, even coloration that I didn't actually realize was on the figure in the first place, like these kind of little green spots all over the back. I didn't notice that for some reason in the original prototype images. And then we also have a nice lighter tone here moving along the underbelly of the Triceratops, which is really cool. If we bring it in for a nice closer look, you can see the head sculpt looks pretty good. We've got some decent texturing to the skin here in the face. Again, quite a bit of variation of the style. Like you could see different style skin texture on the lower jaw. Well, moving along here up into the top here turns into a bit more of a standard, almost traditional type of scale detail moving along the mouth. And then a little bit more of a mixture of scales and just variation of skin texture as you move up there toward the eye. The eye looks pretty decent, but it is definitely another of those instances where the pupil is kind of hard to make out. From certain angles you can kind of see it, but for the most part, it's another one of those situations where, personally, I don't think the glass eyes are working too well for these figures. As you move up into the frill, though, you can see some larger scale detail, definitely reminiscent to what you would expect to see on a Jurassic Triceratops. We can see more of that green up there. Primarily, we have kind of like a dark green tone for the body, and then you have this bit of a brighter green that shows up here in the frill, and you can see it basically just kind of splattering all over up here in the frill, and I think it looks quite nice. Definitely adds some variation of color to the face and, well, at least the frill area. That looks pretty good. You can see the spikes moving along the frill are also very nicely painted. Quite precise as far as the paintwork goes. I don't really see any sloppiness, which is definitely a huge plus. And you can see some decent detail within those areas. And yes, you can even see that the spike here kind of on the side of the face is also painted. And then, of course, the horns up here as well. And you can see, again, the detailing of the horns looks really nice. A nice dark wash, or a wash of some kind, maybe like a grayish wash, would have really brought the detail out in those horns quite beautifully. But you can see the nostrils and everything. The beak as well also sports the same coloration we have for the horns of our Triceratops. We do have a articulated jaw, if I can get it open here. There we go. It's definitely a tricky one to get open. You can get a good feel for what it looks like once the jaw is open. Definitely looks about as awkward as it gets, but I still can appreciate the fact that they are trying as far as the articulated jaw goes on the Triceratops, because when it comes to the adult, we did not have jaw articulation, and it's probably one of the biggest complaints I think that people had about that figure. But you can see it still doesn't look super smooth on the figure. Like once the mouth is open, it definitely looks awkward here and creates a pretty big gap where the mouth opens, but it could be worse. On the inside of the mouth, you can see the tongue and everything sculpted out in there, also painted nicely with a pinkish tone. And that goes through the course of the entire inside of the mouth, basically just that nice pinkish tone in there with a little bit of a satin shine, which is definitely a plus. And the jaw works pretty decently, but it is a little bit tricky to get a hold of. Like, I have a hard time grabbing that jaw because it's a little bit smaller, so it's sort of inside. You can see the top of the beak is definitely a bit wider, so it's kind of hard to actually grasp the lower jaw to open it, but it's, okay, it works all right. As far as the articulation of the neck, you can see up and down is actually super, super smooth and definitely looks nice. You've got some pretty decent articulation in that area. You don't have anything really left or right. It can swivel, which is a plus, but there's just maybe a slight bit, as you can see, and it kind of just pops right back into place. but not really much as far as mobility left and right when it comes to the Triceratops. Moving back into the neck, you can see some creasing and wrinkling in the skin right here in the neck. If you lead up here into the back of the frill, you can see the skin texture looks pretty decent back there, definitely quite vibrant. We have the green coloration picking up there on the back of the neck and leading out here through the course of the body, and it basically just kind of spots and splatters everywhere, moving along the back of the Triceratops until you lead out into the tail, and then you can see it disappears as we lead out into the tail of the dinosaur. As you move down into the side, you can see a dry brushing that's actually been applied with that same, kind of looks like the same darker green. They've dry brushed some of the detail out in the side of the stomach of the Triceratops. But sculpt-wise, it definitely looks really good. You can see the detail and everything looks quite vibrant throughout. As you move down into the legs, I think it's really quite vibrant, maybe even better than we see in the body. But there isn't really much in the way of variation of color leading down into the legs. It's basically just the dark primary green tone of the body. But the skin texture looks nice. The muscle definition is definitely there. As you lead down into the feet, you can see the feet are sculpted nicely. It is hard to really decipher if there's a slightly alternate tone of color for the nails. There is a satin shine on the nails for sure, I can see that, but I don't notice any strong difference in color though between the nails and the feet and legs and everything. Looks pretty much the same to me. But as far as the leg articulation goes, forward and back, it doesn't really come out away from the body, maybe a slight amount of wiggle room. And then you've got the articulation in the elbow, which you can see can go forward and back. It goes about that far forward and about that far back. And it can swivel as well. And then you also have ankle articulation, which is very stiff, but you can move it forward and back and can also swivel in that area as well. And then, of course, leading back into the rear leg, looks like we're going to have actually the same articulation back here. Again, forward and back. Does come out away from the body back here, though, which you can see, which is nice. Then you've got the knee articulation. Goes about that far forward, about that far back. And then again, the ankle, exactly the same pretty much as we saw on the front leg, which is definitely nice. And then again, can swivel. So pretty decent mobility, even if it doesn't have the greatest articulation or mobility in the neck, does have better articulation in the legs than I was expecting. But you can see, again, the skin texture looking really nice, the musculature looking really nice. You can see the knee and everything, the calf muscle leading down, and a beautiful foot sculpt for the rear leg. And then we lead back up, and you can see some wrinkling, just some slight wrinkling here behind the thigh leading into the tail, and you can also see the tail looking pretty nice as we lead out. Good bit of variation to the scales and everything here in the tail leading out. And one thing that is really cool is you can see this lighter tone for the underside actually leads the entire way out into the tail, like almost the entire way through, which is definitely a plus. It's not often you see Mattel figures having the lighter coloration of the underbelly run the entire way through. As far as the tail articulation, you can go up and down, left and right, and can swivel, of course. I don't know if it's a wire tail. If the tail is a wire tail, it's very stiff and doesn't feel like it's a wire tail. I think maybe it's just too short. I'm not sure, but doesn't really seem to be moving like it would be a wire tail. But you can see, again, the Triceratops is going to look pretty much the same on both sides, you know, as it did, of course, on the initial side. The eye looks maybe... See, when I bring it up to the camera, I feel like it's really hard to pick it out. In person, I can kind of make out the pupil a little bit nicer than I was expecting to, or even nicer than I did on the other side, but it's still, again, just looks awkward. I don't know. I think they really need to, unfortunately, ditch the glass eye idea. I was excited about it at first, but for some reason, it's just not working so far. When it comes to these figures, it just can't look realistic, or it just doesn't look the way it should. But as far as the size goes, for a length on our Triceratops, actually, let's move the head up a little bit. Lengthwise, you're looking at about 6 3/4 inches, or a little bit over 17, maybe heading towards 17.5 centimeters. And then for a height, about 3 inches almost on the dot, or just shy of 8 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect Day Human Being next to our Hammond Collection Triceratops. And as you can see, it's got a pretty decent size to it, but it's definitely in the kind of Attack Pack, Danger Pack size range. No question about that. Then for a comparison next to the Hammond Collection Atrociraptor, which is releasing again basically with this Triceratops, you can see how they size up next to each other. We also have a comparison comparison next to the baby Hammond Collection Stegosaurus, which I think they look pretty cute with each other. The Hammond Collection Dimetrodon, which you can see as well, again, pretty close to the same size as the Triceratops. And the final comparison here is with the Hammond Collection Triceratops itself, the adult version. They do look super cool with each other, I could definitely say that, and I really do feel like the Hammond Collection Triceratops is an underrated figure. It is a gorgeous sculpt with some really quite nice looking paint application overall. I just really wish they would have given it an articulated jaw and increased the size, and it would have been such a great figure, but the figure overall, again, definitely looks cool next to the baby. So this brand new Mattel Jurassic World Hammond Collection Baby Triceratops is yet another pretty cool figure. It's not anything mind-blowing, but I will say I do quite like it. It is very nicely sculpted, sports a lot of beautiful fine detail throughout. I expect no less when it comes to a Mattel release, especially in the Hammond Collection. Again, the sculpts are always fantastic, at least when it comes to the fine detail. The overall appearance to it looks pretty close to what I would expect when it comes to a baby Jurassic style Triceratops, so I think they did a good job as far as that goes. And the paint application on this one is really well done also. You know, you've got quite a bit of color from head to tail, and the fact that we have all of the spikes and horns and everything on the face painted out, including the beak and everything, is definitely a huge plus. And I like the fact that they've even applied some dry brushing techniques through certain areas of the body to give it just a little bit more variation of color. I would have liked to have seen maybe some sort of coloration on the nails that differentiated them from the feet, but at least they did add a little bit of a satin shine. The tail also looks nice with the lighter tone running the entire way out through the underside of the figure, even out onto the tail. But personally, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that green that's on the upper part of the Triceratops run out onto the tail, but it's not the end of the world. The articulation is pretty smooth outside of the neck. It's actually really smooth in the neck, but only up and down. There isn't really much in the way of left and right movement. I would almost say none at all. So that's a little depressing when it comes to the figure. I feel like it really could have benefited from that left and right articulation and could have made the figure really quite cool, especially considering the adult had it, so I don't know why the baby wouldn't have it, but it is what it is, I guess. But still, pretty decent articulation and definitely fairly smooth in certain areas. The legs are really smooth. The up and down motion of the head and neck area is really quite smooth as well. The articulated jaw looks a little awkward, but it's still pretty fun to have it included. So overall, it's definitely a fun release. If you are interested in picking one up, you can, of course, check your local Ross. Hopefully they'll have it in stock at least sometime soon, if not already. Or you can wait until it actually releases from Target again sometime in the middle of next month. So one of those two things, definitely pick the figure up. Of course, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.